The ABC are talking about the prospect of negative interest rates. Let's have a look. Hello everyone, Florian Heise here and welcome to another episode of Heise Says. I have my stein of coffee and I thought we'd go through this latest report from the ABC. And finally they're starting to discuss or look at the potential for negative interest rates and referring to the IMF, who have cutting edge modern monetary policy and theory that allows for negative interest rates or is encouraging for it. So in some ways this is a good sign that this is being talked about. Good work, Nazim. Good work. It's great that it's coming to a more mainstream platform, although it would have been nice if it had been discussed perhaps when there was still an opportunity for people to make submissions. But it's good that this is being discussed and it's good that it's here. So let's have a look. As the federal government moves to ban cash transactions above $10,000, there's this theory gaining traction that the real motive for the cash ban isn't the so-called black economy, but rather to give authorities greater control over your behavior during recessions. There you go. We can't have people being restricted, or being free, frankly. You need to restrict them. Control the plebs, guys. Control the plebs. This theory, put forward by economists such as John Adams and picked up by several federal politicians, has not been plucked out of thin air. Well, no, it hasn't. John hasn't made up that conspiracy. It's based on repeated public papers and statements by the international body in charge of financial stability, the Washington-based International Monetary Fund, or IMF. A recent blog post entitled Cashing In, How to Make Negative Interest Rates Works, explains its motives in wanting negative interest rates, a situation where instead of receiving money on deposits, deposits must pay regularly to keep their money in the bank. I've actually gone through that blog post, and if I'm smart enough to remember, I'll write down the time here, 2:10. I will link to that card right up here. You can have a look through that. As the blog notes, during the global financial crisis, central banks reduced interest rates. 10 years later, interest rates remain low in most countries, and while the global economy has been recovering, further downturns are inevitable. Some countries actually have negative interest rates already, and we've got all the negative bond yields. So perhaps people are parking their money, or institutions are parking their money in bonds, even with a negative yield of negative 1% or whatever it is, depending on what they're buying, because it might be better than the negative 4%, 5%, 6%, 10% that could happen with negative interest rates. It's just a theory. Just a theory. Severe recessions have historically required 3 to 6 percentage point cuts in policy rates, the IMF blog observed. If another crisis happens, few countries would have that kind of room for monetary policy to respond. Well, maybe we need to look at the whole concept of having this monetary policy working the way it is anyway. This repeated boom-bust cycle and manipulation of the market. Central planning never works, guys. It's an emergent system. You can't central plan yourself out of these issues. You just delay the inevitable. The article then goes on to explain that to get around this problem, a recent IMF staff study looked at how it could bring in a system that would make deeply negative interest rates a feasible option. The answer, it says, is to phase out cash. Cash acts as an interest rate floor. When cash is available, cutting interest rates into negative territory becomes impossible. Cash acts as an interest rate floor as people hold cash when bank deposit interest rates are at zero. The thought of paying the major banks to hold your money isn't one that most consumers would jump at. Alternatively, as risky as it may be, is hoarding cash or making investments in tangible commodities like gold. So the end game, the article explains, is the IMF's ideal world, one without cash. So this is where the Chicago School is heading. Guys, it's the natural evolution of this great big debt-laden scheme they've got going. Without cash, depositors would have to pay the negative interest rates to keep their money with the bank, making consumption and investment more attractive, it said. This would jolt lending, boost demand, and stimulate the economy artificially. Artificially. In other words, so what happens when you stimulate a system artificially? What happens? What happens if you've got a sudden influx of money or sudden influx of capital? What happens to Spain when they had the sudden influx of Gauls from the Americas? What happened there? Maybe we need to look at some history, guys. In other words, the central banks get greater control to influence your behavior and economic outcomes. For those who have faith in monetary policy and central banks, this is no problem. But 1 year on from the Central Banking Royal Commission, faith in our financial institutions and the regulators who fail to police the bank's bad behavior isn't exactly at an all-time high. Well, yes, that's a very good point. I'd say it's completely non-existent. Completely non-existent. So negative interest rates could affect Australia. This weird world where savers are penalised and borrowers get paid is no longer just a problem for central banks in Europe and Japan. The Reserve Bank's consecutive interest rate cuts in June and July have taken the cash rate to a historic low of just 1%. Put this together with Governor Philip Lowe's comments on August 9 at a parliamentary hearing. He was asked by Labour's Andrew Leigh what work the Reserve Bank has done on what unconventional monetary policy might look like as Australia heads towards the zero lower bound of interest rates. Dr. Lowe answered, "I think it's unlikely, but it is possible we're preparing to do unconventional things if the circumstances warrant it." In answering some other questions, Dr. Leigh threw his weight. Dr. Lowe also noted that monetary policy is less effective than it used to be. Once upon a time, when we lowered interest rates, people were very quick to run off to the bank to borrow money to spend, he said. In today's environment, people don't run off to the bank to borrow money more when interest rates fall. They're more likely to pay back their mortgage more quickly. Well, yes, it's because our debts are at an all-time high. That's why. There's only so much people will borrow for crap. What are they going to borrow? To buy an apartment so they can get evacuated because it's a smoking pile of rubbish that could burn, or they've got water ingress? No. What else? Equities in the overinflated stock market because companies are just buying back their own shares? Yeah, we'll see. Dr. Lowe also noted international political tensions are weakening the global outlook, and it's very hard for central banks to completely offset it. Well, it's impossible for them to offset that. They're just going along for the ride, especially here in Australia. I mean, come on, guys. Phasing out cash to target Aussie national sport. Now let's return to the problem of the black economy. Australia is not standing alone in moving towards a cash limit. A number of other countries have already imposed limits. France has banned cash transactions above €1,000, Spain 2.5, Italy 3,000. Also in 2016, the European Central Bank announced it would end the production and issuance of €500 notes at the end of 2018. The ECB was implementing this change. The man who headed the federal government's Black Economic Task Force, the late Michael Andrew, he died in June, was undertaking the enormous task of pulling together an array of information about the scale of the illegal cash economy. Mr. Andrews had previously said that the biggest hurdle to tackling the black economy is cultural. Australians, he said, viewed taking cash-only payments and not declaring it as almost a national sport. The task force went on to estimate the cost of the illegal activity could now be about 3% of GDP, roughly $50 billion. But this figure, it said, was a qualitative estimate based on a wide definition of what makes up the black economy. The $50 billion estimate includes a host of activities, including underpaying wages or paying for work cash in hand, underreporting income, sham contracting, phoenixing, identity fraud, ABN and GST fraud, evasion of illicit tobacco, money laundering, unregulated gambling, criminal acts, counterfeiting goods, and illegal drugs. How many of those do you think will actually be impacted by this cash limit? Illicit drugs? No. Criminal acts? Nope. Unregulated gambling? No. Evasion of illicit tobacco? Nope. GST fraud? ABN? No. Yeah. Yep. So more changes flagged under Black Economy banner. The task force, in its final report, suggested the ABS do proper modelling on the economy and social costs. This work has not yet been done. Well, there you go. Right there. I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised at all. They won't do the work because that will disprove a lot of the arguments they're putting forward. I guarantee it. I bet it can't not. I bet that CTO token that someone said they're going to send me, I bet that one on it. But when I get it, I'm sure I'll get it. Yet the government is moving ahead with proposed laws that could make people criminals. under the threat of 2 years jail for spending more than $10,000 in cash. The politics will dictate whether and how quickly the government can push its cash limit bill through, with one nation already indicating it will not support the proposed law, but Labour saying it likely will. Well, there you go. There you go. Labour showing the true colours. Well, I mean, come on, they're leftists, they're in bed with the Greens, taking away your individual liberties. Yeah. It comes with the territory, doesn't it, guys? Comes with the territory. Opposition Assistant Treasury spokesman Stephen Jones has also indicated that he wants to see the ban apply to Bitcoin, a move that would send the Bitcoin industry into disarray, giving its repeated public campaigns to invest in the digital currency to avoid the proposed cash ban. Yeah, well, but that's not all that is in store under the government's Fighting the Black Economy banner. Treasury is asking the public whether the government should also change the law to revise the onus of proof for serious black economy offences and give the Australian Tax Office even more powers to hunt down whoever it deems to be a black economy criminal. This proposal has already faced much criticism from tax experts and business lobbyists that say such measures could adversely impact the rights of the individual and their liberties. Well, that is definitely something I think I will look in for another video, but it sounds horrific. It sounds horrific. Just look at what happened with the robo-debt. Look at what happened there. So, yeah. Just more control, less freedom, guys. To even spend your own money. The money that you work for. The money that you get after you work for, a third of the year for the government. They're going to control how you're going to spend it. Most of the stuff you'll spend it on is probably already taxed to the arse anyway. Look at petrol, look at cigarettes, look at alcohol. You work yourself to death so you can have time off to relax. You want a beer, you're paying tax for that, you're paying tax for everything. Australia, the lucky country. Yeah. In your apartment that's spontaneously catching on fire because of the dodgy cladding, because dodgy materials have been brought in to meet requirements for environmental performance criteria that probably won't make any difference at all, or has been, dodgily calculated. So you can get lectured to. Yeah. Australia's the lucky country. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you later. Take care.